You know, you can think of this podcast as a kind of digital fanzine. And if the fanzines I used to read as a child had featured a Liverpool fan, then the people selling them outside Old Trafford would have been set on fire, or worse, ostracised. But times change. Hair's grey. Trousers go from wide to really thin again, and then even wider. And if you've got more in common with that tit who calls himself Speed than with our guest today, it's probably not the podcast for you. With Remo and me is Dave Randles, twice voted hardest juvenile on the Cop in the early 80s, and in more recent times, the man who painted the portrait of Brendan Rodgers that he had of himself in his house, and he installed a light above it too. Liverpool fans, Dave, are like less cocky than we've been used to for the last few years going into this game.
Yeah, and rightly so. It's not been a great start to the season for Liverpool, but I think already 1 point behind Arsenal at the top of the league, and you can get a bit complacent with success, can't you? And when a couple of defeats and people start to panic, it's a bit of I guess a bit of apathy at the minute as well in terms of coming into this fixture. We've just had an international break as well, another one. Why do they keep putting international breaks? About 4 weeks into the proper football season. It's an absolute pain. So it's kind of taken a little bit of emphasis, I think, off this game at the weekend. And yet the break probably came at a good time for Liverpool. They're not playing well. The new players aren't gelling yet. It's clear to see. And yet they're still up there, right at the top of the league. So at least it makes the title race interesting. If it is a race, it's too early. It's too early in the season. So yeah, like I say, I read something earlier saying that this is do or die for a must-win game for Arne Slot, and it's like, well, every Liverpool United game is must-win for both managers. I saw the Sunderland game before the break, was do or die for Amorim, wasn't it? So yeah, we deal in hyperbole, don't we, and platitudes and all that stuff with football. Gets a bit calm heads, I think, coming into this one.
We'd love to be there, wouldn't we, Remo? Like a do or die game when you've got the league title under
when you've got a league title in your back pocket. Christ, yeah. I suppose you could hark back to that when Ferguson won the league in 93, 94, just missed out in 95, and then he sold that trio, didn't he? And there was a poll in the Evening News that kind of, I think 60-70% said he should have been sacked, and then he went out and won the double the next year in 96.
That year?
Yeah, well, effectively, yeah.
It was that year. He sold the players that summer, and everyone
in 95, and they won it. Yeah, in 95, 96.
Little-known former Liverpool defender saying you can't win anything with kids. That was that summer.
But yeah, like Dave said, the knee-jerk reaction to every little thing, and most of it's to get clicks. We know that, and everyone's just desperate to hype up the next thing on telly, which this week is United Liverpool.
It's different this time, isn't it? Because Liverpool are allowed 12 players on Sunday.
12th player scores the late goal, of course. It's, like I said, I can read it between the lines. I think Slot has got a little bit kind of twitchy lately as well, because there is pressure on him, of course. There is, you spend 200 million on two players. Of course, there's pressure on you, and it hasn't clicked for Wirtz and Isak, not yet. But Isak hasn't had a pre-season. Him and Wirtz need to link up. They're not used to each other, so it hasn't clicked yet. But I know in his presser for, what was it, the Chelsea game, wasn't it, before the break, and he only came in for about 12 minutes, and it was very short, and he was a little bit terse with some of his answers, and didn't really want to indulge any of the questions about the squad, kind of, and some of the changes he's made, and why is he playing Szoboszlai at right back when he's got Frimpong and Conor Bradley, and all this kind of stuff. So he wasn't entertaining it. So it's the first time really since he joined the club summer before last to replace Jurgen Klopp, of course, that he's really been under pressure, because last season was just kind of almost like a dream start for him.
He's been a bit too good to be true, hasn't he? Because we can't find I've not seen any faults in him. And there was a time when Klopp was a bit like that. And then when he got agitated about stuff, the kind of mask would slip sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, it's easy to be calm, when you're winning. Things are much better when you're winning, of course they are. And it's kind of how you cope and adapt and respond when things start going wrong. But again, it's not the defeats. You can look at defeats and say, oh, there's a couple of late goals, Chelsea, Palace, but it's not really the nature of the defeat. It's the performances. They're not as fluid as they were last season. To be honest, they're not almost as fluid as they were under Jurgen Klopp anyway. It's a different brand of football. They take a lot They have many more touches on the ball under Arne Slot than they did under Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp was just chaos. It was great to watch, but your heart was in your mouth.
This is more going back to the kind of pass it back to Grobler for a bit and roll it around.
Yeah. It's calmer. It's a much calmer style of football. Now, you got to think as well, last season, it's a bit like, when an unknown team like a Blackpool or a Luton gets promoted, into the Premier League, and they have this run, don't they, of 5-6 games and until opposition teams suss them out. It's a bit like that with Slot, I think. The opposition managers have sussed him out now. They know kind of how his teams play, and they know how to counter that. Kind of we're seeing 2 banks of 4, low block. Palace, I thought, were brilliant, and Palace are a very good team this season, by the way. I think Europe's going to kill them, actually. I think Europe, unfortunately for them, is going to kill them because they're not used to playing Thursday, Sunday, so it's unfortunate that Liverpool didn't play them in 2 months rather than when they played them the other week, because they only started the European campaign a week later. But they look like a very good side, and a threadbare squad, but their first 11 is good, is a good side. So actually that defeat, fair. They were the better team. 45 minutes at least. Very good side. Chelsea on a bad side. I know you beat Chelsea the other week. That could have been a turning point for your season, but then did you lose to Brentford and lost badly the week after, and then be Sunderland? So there's lots of teams are capable of beating each other in this league, and I think there's more teams now have sussed Liverpool, have sussed out Slot and his style, so he's got to adapt to that. But he's very good at adapting as well. What he was doing last season was, and we haven't seen as much of it this year, is he'd kind of look at a team in the first half and kind of work out the weaknesses. And at half time, he'd change things and move them round. And you'd see a response from Liverpool in the second half, and they tend to get a lot of second half goals. Whereas we haven't seen as much of that this year from him, not yet. But
scored a few injury time goals.
Yeah, well, yeah, we saw it early on, of course, but I know Liverpool have been on the receiving end of a couple of those, haven't they? You can't celebrate injury time goals and then start complaining when you concede a couple as well. It's it's fair enough. So yeah, there's a couple of things going on, I think, at the minute that he's got to address, and it'll take time, but yeah, if United beat Liverpool at the weekend, he will be under more pressure, but then couple of minutes, or Arsenal go and lose, or Tottenham are up there, aren't they? Well, Brentford are up there as well. So it's Everton are in the top 10. That ain't going to last, is it? So
they've got City on Saturday. That'll be an interesting one to see where they are.
So I was reading somewhere that, because Florian Wirtz cost like a load of money, didn't he? He was really expensive, and I was reading somewhere a Liverpool fan saying that they should just sort of take him out for a bit, drop him for a bit and see how he goes on watching the game. Would that provide a space in the side for Michael Oliver?
Probably, yeah. You could drop pull Salah out as well, and then you could put one of the linesmen on.
We've had some dodgy red cards at Anfield last few years. The Diogo Dalot one, that was reminiscent of when Elleray sent Irwin off just for being Irish.
Yeah.
Oh, the Elleray one, Christ! I was there that night, and we weren't quite sure. You didn't get any replays, anything like that, but we were like, what the fuck's he sent him off for? He just literally tapped the ball away, and again, obviously it was
loud.
It was a big night, that, because Liverpool came back from 2-0 down to draw 2-2, and it was it was mayhem all over, and we thought we might have blown the league that night, and with it the treble. But Christ, I think that season Ellery sent Keane. No, he sent Keane off in the semi-final replay, but probably quite rightly. But he also disallowed a goal in the original semi-final, didn't he?
Where Giggs managed to play himself offside with the pass.
Played himself offside.
One of the most amazing things. But Irwin missed the cup final for that one, whereas Diogo Dalot probably just missed his bus home or something like that, because
missed his school alarm in the morning.
What's going to happen? Are you going to be intimidating the ref, or is it because there's so much attention on Michael Oliver? Is that going to be one of those that plays in United's favour, like when people started going on about Anthony Taylor for a bit, and then United never got a decision?
I don't know. These guys are professional now, aren't they? They rise above it, surely. Yeah, I don't know. Again, there's so much scrutiny, isn't there, on referees and with VAR and all the rest of it. There's bound to be something goes on that's controversial, and it is a derby game ultimately, isn't it? Not kind of an inner city derby, like City and United or Liverpool and Everton, but it is classed as a derby now, certainly in global terms, a Northwest derby. So they are, or they should be, volatile affairs, and if they're not, there's something wrong.
Do you think they're
Yeah.
anything close to what they used to be, Dave, in terms of atmosphere?
I think you get your better atmospheres at these games. Some of the games that I've been to Anfield over the last couple of years, the atmosphere's been dreadful, to be honest with you, quite frankly. Some of the European games tend to be all right midweek under the lights, that kind of thing. But back end of the season, going for league titles, the atmosphere picks up a bit. But the atmosphere, I think, in terms of what we used to know it as at Anfield, is poor, generally speaking. Probably similar at Old Trafford as well, I guess. And again, there's various reasons for that. I mean, it's different, I guess, at United at the minute because you're not winning, or you're not winning trophies on a regular basis, so there's that angst and I guess that frustration, and that creeps into, atmosphere. It was at Liverpool, the atmosphere has been good on occasions over the last couple of years. Of course, it has to be, we've been winning things, but it should be good on Sunday. Is it an early kickoff? What time is it? 2 o'clock? Or is it
No,
2
it's
o'clock?
half 4.
It's 4:30. Yeah.
Okay, because early kickoffs tend to bring poor atmosphere anyway. People are still half asleep, or if they haven't been in the pub or whatever. The later kickoff will help. So I think it should be a good atmosphere. I would hope it's a good atmosphere. But again, it just depends on, an early United goal. It becomes a tense atmosphere. Liverpool score early, the place should be bouncing. But I just find the atmosphere now, it's just a bit manufactured.
It's very sanitised now.
It's very sanitised. The ground's a lot bigger as well. So, I've been sat up at the back of the new main stand, and you're miles away from the pitch, and you can barely see the pitch from up there. So you'll hear a chant start on the Kop, and it starts to kind of circulate round. But by the time it gets to you, it's kind of ended on the Kop, and it's just started picking up where you are, and then it fades again. So
These clubs don't do any work on that, though, because they almost deliberately misunderstand supporter culture, so that they don't want to open that box, and so they never think to go like, well, how can we guarantee it? And it's crazy. If you have certain people who come into football talking about marginal gains, and you think, right, you could literally have what footballers call a 12th man, and no, we don't want to put any work into that at all. It's better just to ignore people. And they don't even need to do much, you know what I mean? Supporters are literally volunteered, like throwing themselves at the club to help with that. And none of these clubs seem interested in it because there's such a disconnect between the people running it and the people who care about it as much.
Yeah. And the irony is as well is that, there's so many chants now and different songs, and everyone seems to know the words, but nobody seems to know how to get them going collectively. I was at game was out the other week. Southampton Carabao Cup, so it was a different crowd anyway, but I was just sat off just to the side of the Kop, and there was this 2 lads next to me, about 15, and his younger brother who must have been about 10, and they knew the words, they knew songs that I've never heard of, because they're all learnt on the internet now. It's all YouTube stuff or TikTok or whatever. So we had like Poor Scouse of Tommy going, and Fields of Manfield Road and all that, all the old classics, and kind of like half kind of sung, and they never really got going. But then these lads, they just knew the words to everything, and they were trying to get it going. And I was thinking, like, fair play to them. Like, but so there's loads more songs and chants now, but actually getting the crowd to come on board collectively is an issue. I think you can probably count on one hand the amount of grounds around the Premier League, that are really bouncing on a regular basis, and Anfield isn't one of them. Old Trafford isn't one of them anymore. Palace is up there. Palace is always good. I think Forest have a pretty good atmosphere.
Well, Palace embrace that whole culture, whether we laugh at it a bit with the, what are they, the Homesdale fanatics or whatever. You kind of laugh up your sleeve at them a bit, but then actually, it works for them, and they've got a good relationship with the club. The club let them do pretty much whatever they want. I mean, the first time we really noticed it was at that cup final a few years ago when Lingard scored the winner. I don't know, what was it, 2017, something like that. But, their banner displays and all that, absolutely. We had like tiny little plastic flags, and they had, massive great eagle that flapped its wings and all that crap. And you're like, oh, right, fair enough, yeah. Can we have another flag? Who's nicked mine? It just, they were just way ahead of us at that time. we've done a bit this season. The TRA have got their act together with quite a lot of flags before the match and stuff like that, but the atmosphere is still sorely lacking.
There was a discussion, was there not, a few years ago between United supporters groups and Liverpool supporters groups, and the impression we got back, and I say this with no amount of detail or recent research, but the Liverpool fans weren't really up for being seen to be collaborating. But is that something you know about, Dave? Or I don't want to chuck you on the spot on that. It's just how I remember being told.
Not too sure on that one. I mean, I know that, Liverpool fans, or kind of the fans, I guess, who class themselves as hardcore fans and maybe affiliated to the unions like Spirit Shankly and a few of those other groups would probably like to be seen to be kind of doing their own thing, and they've always prided themselves on kind of organic fan culture. They've always arranged flag days and all that kind of thing, and there'll be a couple this season again, but it's I just think the crowd now is so disparate. And partly because the ground's much bigger than it was, a couple of years ago, of course, because of the ground expansion. But I mean, you touched on it then. The clubs don't really want to buy into it. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. You just put a load of fans together that want to sing and want to get on board with creating a good atmosphere. But doesn't seem to happen. So I'm not sure about the collaboration thing, or if Liverpool fans kind of didn't buy into that. I don't know. I know they'll speak about things like ticket prices and and boycotting or protesting against ticket prices and that, so there is some collaboration going on there. In terms of the atmosphere stuff, I'm not too sure what happened there between the two clubs, but it is something that we've got in common. Two of the most renowned and historic clubs and successful clubs, or the two most successful clubs in the country, and yet we're both kind of suffering from the same kind of despondency, I think, when it comes to fan culture. So it would make sense, for the two sets of fans to get their heads together, despite rivalries and all that, because sometimes you could just put rivalry out the window because you've got this common goal, and like I say, such as the ticket price and thing.
It's the only way that change will happen. And I'm well aware that both Jim Ratcliffe and Omar Barada have started listening to this podcast now, so it behoves me to at least seek some level of balance. And if either of them want to email us, it's creamofmanchester1878@gmail.com. And that goes for anyone watching or listening to this, creamofmanchester88@gmail.com. Remo will reply to that directly. Sometimes you'll get offered straight out for a fight. If that doesn't appeal to you, then get onto YouTube, like and subscribe, please. We're trying to build this up, and you can social and hashtag yourself stupid. You'll find us on all of those platforms, and then we'll just decide what we do with it and if we reply and how busy we are and all the rest of it. We're laughing at... I'm only being playful about the referee, by the way. I think it's a really difficult job. The reality of this is Manchester United have not won at Anfield since 2016. The glory days of Mata, the Argentinian lad, setting him up, which feels like a lifetime ago now, and that's not been down to referees, or even odd red cards that were very odd indeed. So really, the chances of a win there, even a draw's an upset for United at Anfield. Didn't it, Remo? Don't you go thinking like that?
Yeah. I mean, we celebrated that draw last year a bit like a win, didn't we? And would you take a draw now for Sunday? You know what? If it was a fighting draw, yeah, you would. It showing the same battle they did last year, because that was, I think if I remember rightly, half time last year, first half we were pretty crap, and then we actually came out all guns blazing second half and took it to them and should have won. My boy Maguire spooned one in the last minute to win it. Bless him, anyone but him. You know what? Yeah, you go out and play properly on Sunday, show some fight. Yeah, even a reverse, the fans would take that. What we don't want is a similar performance to Brentford, which came after a win, where they just kind of walked through the midfield. They bullied us up front and in our box, and it had defeat written on it from the moment they scored that first goal. So yeah, it's the minimum you should expect in a United-Liverpool game is battling, 3 or 4 yellow cards and, get stuck in. But it's no one's that confident of that at the minute, because I think, partly what we discussed earlier, nobody is consistent in this league at the minute. Arsenal are kind of the closest to it, but I don't think they look that great. But it is topsy-turvy, and we've just got to put a run of results together, because otherwise despondency will set in, and I think you'll see a totally different mood at Old Trafford. But, football fans are fickle. We got that win. We spoke before Sunderland and we said, God help us if we lose on Saturday. They won fairly comfortably, and suddenly everything's all right. And I know people who are absolutely lumping on United at 4-1 on Sunday. I won't be, but I know a lot of people who are putting good money on it, and it's not a bad bet. 4-1 at Anfield. Bloody hell. I'll have some. Well, I would have some of that if I had any money.
If I've had a drink first. What about you, Dave?
I think it's a good time to play Liverpool at Anfield. Judging on that record, I didn't realise it was 2016. I know it's kind of 14 games or something, or Liverpool have been dominant for a long time over United. But a couple of draws thrown in there, but then a couple of big, heavy wins as well for Liverpool. I don't think we're going to see one of those on Sunday. But I think it's a good time for United to play Liverpool. If it was at Anfield, if it was at Old Trafford, I'd be a bit more concerned, with your home fans behind you. But saying that can work both ways, can't it? Because if things don't start going Liverpool's way, and the crowd get anxious, and that can be counterproductive. But yeah, there's obvious gaps or holes to pick in Liverpool's team at the minute. Based on what we've seen so far this season, the defence is nothing like what it was last season. The stats compared to this time last year with the defence are just complete contrast. We're shipping too many goals, and it's the same centre halves. It's your fullbacks that have changed, but it's kind of knocked out the equilibrium of the defence. There's talk that Van Dijk's kind of not playing as well as he was, but then there's loads of different factors involved. It's not just about the back four; it's about how the midfield is set up as well. And Vert plays into that as well. There's talk that Vert actually, if Salah was a bit more prolific like he normally is, then we wouldn't be criticising Vert as much, because he'd have about 4 more assists. In fact, he hasn't got any assists, has he? He hasn't scored. But Salah's only scored 2 goals, so Salah's not firing. So Salah is going to make Vert look better. I mentioned Isak before. He's going to make Vert look better as well when that starts to click. And it will at some point. It will click. It just depends how late it is for Liverpool. Ekitike looks good. He's a threat. It depends whether he starts or not. But he's a big, strong pain in the arse basically for any defender, so depending who plays at the back for you. Again, I don't know who your kind of first choice defence is at the minute. I don't think Amorim knows either. No. But Ekitike, I think, could probably cause more problems than Isak at the moment. But now watch Isak bang a hat-trick in now at the weekend, but Ekitike's looked very good.
Well, it is this weekend. Do you get to watch these lads generally at weekends? Because these fixture changes that have just been announced have not been popular, Rebo, among the United fans. I mean, what is it? 1 weekend home game in 50-odd days now till Christmas?
Yeah, 12 weeks. And that they've not announced the actual Christmas games yet. So I think we're supposed to play Newcastle on Saturday the 27th, but that could get bumped. I mean, I know Boxing Day, everyone's off anyway. There's no Boxing Day games announced yet, which is a bit weird. But yeah, so we've got West Ham Everton on a Monday, West Ham on a Thursday, Bournemouth. Bournemouth, I think, on a Monday. It's an absolute shit show because, with all due respect, people, the whole point of playing football at the weekend is that that's when people are free. Us being relatively local, it's not the end of the world, but I can't take, I was going to take my lad before Christmas and around his birthday, he's 11 years old. Can't take him on a Monday night at 8 o'clock. I mean, I could, but he's not going to come home and get to sleep much before midnight. And it's, it's not ideal for his school life. So it's just, seems like they're taking the piss out of us because we're not doing those European games, and that's our own fault, that they're looking at maximising our TV potential by shoving us on a Monday or a Thursday and what have you.
It's Bournemouth and West Ham.
Yeah, exactly.
A treat for the nation.
But you'll still get the biggest audience watching it, won't you? So yeah, the games might be crap, but people will still watch it. Listen, Dave and I were discussing earlier, the game, that boat sailed a long, long time ago in terms of TV money and them shoving games left, right and centre and spoiling travel plans for people who travel from further afield. But this really feels like a piss take.
Just some guardrails and restrictions would be nice that can easily be worked out. You shouldn't be playing It shouldn't be ever like Newcastle against Southampton on a midweek game. That just shouldn't be allowed. That's 2 days off work. It just shouldn't be allowed.
But they don't care. We're
they don't
playing
care.
Palace away on a Sunday at 12 o'clock.
Yeah.
How the
It's
hell
really
do you
hard
get
to
there,
get
there
there,
from?
yeah, it's really hard,
get
yeah.
there from Manchester's a good 6 hours fanning around South London, and it's just they just do not care, and they don't. I suppose they don't pretend to care anymore. But Sky will still say, for the fans all over the logos, but it's not even close.
I was looking at Northwest Tonight the other day, Dave, and I see that the Scousers have invented haircuts now. Is this rivalry with Manchester City a media invention?
I missed the haircuts thing. What was that?
There was I didn't really get it, but basically I didn't realise this, but in the Northwest it's you lot who are famous for haircuts. Like, you're really into haircuts. Scousers make sure that they have good haircuts.
Okay.
This is obviously an exclusive thing to Liverpool. I wasn't clear if Wirral was included and the people you lot call Wolves. That wasn't ventured into, but basically, apparently you've got very different attitude to hair to the rest of us. So I thought I added it to the list of things that were invented in Liverpool. Jazz, ice cream, the internet. And I'm wondering if this rivalry with City is another of those inventions or if it's genuine.
Well, as you can see from my grooming, I obviously take a lot of pride in it myself. So yeah, the Liverpool City thing. I think City fans are more bothered about it than Liverpool. I don't think Liverpool fans are that bothered, really. City just kind of a bit of an irritant, really. There's more begrudging respect from Liverpool to United than there'll ever be for City. That's not just me saying that. City is kind of almost like a manufactured concept, really, in the modern game. A little bit like Chelsea, where kind of 15 years ago. So City is what it is. I don't think anyone really respects them and what they've done and how they've gone about it, and why are we still waiting for the Premier League to pull the finger out and do anything about it. Something dodgy going on there, I think, behind the scenes. But yeah, it's not. I think it is. I think it is a media construct, really. Kind of your younger fans will see it as a big rivalry, but people of a certain vintage, such as us, or certainly me, City's never been. In fact, I used to like City. I used to like City because City didn't like United. I used to like Leeds because Leeds didn't like United. Whereas now I've got a lot more time for United and United fans than they have for City. I don't take them seriously, which sounds mad when they've won the amount of titles they have won.
Just a big asterisk next to all of them for you, is it?
Yeah. Next to all of it. City fans can say, we're only being investigated for this period and that period. It's like, yeah, but without those periods, you wouldn't have had all the subsequent success. You wouldn't have gotten to a position of power without that early success, and whatever. Allegedly, I should probably throw that in, shouldn't I? Because I believe City are, or have been, issuing writs to certain journalists that have been suggesting that anything untoward has taken place. So, yeah, they're just a bit of an irritant, really, aren't they, City? But they are the face of modern Premier League football, or they have been for the last kind of 10 years or so, probably longer now. Saw something earlier, or my kicking around on social, or something that Pep Guardiola has been accused of sucking the life out of football. He just never seems happy. He never seems happy. The amount of success that fella's had, I know it's gone a bit south for him the last couple of years, and maybe that's it. He's feeling the pressure, but he just, he seems to be on the attack or on the defensive quite a lot. I think Pep, and it's kind of a lack of humility there with him.
He's got a lot of skeletons.
Yeah. Let's say that. Yeah, but it's I don't. Liverpool United's a much bigger game than Liverpool City.
Well, they say that we're living in the past, saying that.
Well,
Speaking of which, I'm not deliberately winding you up by drinking Thatcher's. There's no relation. Yeah, but sorry. No, they say that it's really a legacy thing. It's because we're jealous of them and they're the future and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but we belong. What we say, we're not jealous of them a little bit, or because success breeds contempt, it breeds jealousy from rivals. Of course, it does. But as I've made the point that that you've actually got to step back and respect what United have done over the years, and as much whether you like Fergie or not. As a rival fan, he was unbelievable in terms of what he did at United. Unbelievable, and that sustained success. Okay, he was a bully and he got his own way with certain methods, but you can't deny what he did. Whereas City, like you say, there's a massive asterisk over everything they've done since 2008. That isn't going to go away. That's never going to go away. And if you ask any, if you got a group of City fans on their own in a pub and recorded the conversation, you'd probably find them admitting that. It's like Everton fans, they hate Liverpool and they go on about this, that, and the other, and all the rest of it. But if you get them on their own, they admit that their clubs has been in a state and has been in a mess. Things are starting to change a little bit at Everton. I know this isn't about Everton, but I kind of was thinking about before. We started this chat about what must it be like being a United fan at the minute, and it must be grim, living in the shadow of City's success. It'd be like Everton being, having this sustained period of success and Liverpool not being successful. Whereas say if United became successful again, and it'll probably happen at some point. These things come in cycles, and our two clubs know that better than anyone. Yeah, you just can't imagine. I just can't imagine what it would be like to be living in Everton's shadow, and that's what it's like, for you guys at the moment in terms of success. So
it's a shame, isn't it, that over our periods of relative success have never really overlapped. We've never. I think, was it 2009?
8, yeah,
8, 9. We were racing each other for the title. Liverpool stuffed us at Old Trafford. Torres had that great game, and it looked like, that was a genuine race for quite a while. In my time, apart from a couple of times in the late 80s when we came second, I think we came second in 80. Yeah, but it was a long, long way. What would be great, I think Peter Houghton is on record as saying the one thing he wants from this period of Liverpool dominance is to have a proper title race with United.
Yeah.
And I think, we'd just like to be in the title
conversation,
just in the conversation.
Happy enough to be in the division at the minute
with anyone, title race with anyone.
Yeah, but with Liverpool would be, if anything, would fire the two fan bases up. That would certainly do it.
What a lovely note to end on. Oh, sorry, go on, Dave.
Sorry, I think that's a good point, though, about going back to the question earlier about, one of the fans thinking coming into this, and there just seems to be, of course, it's a big game, and there's always that rivalry, but there's nothing riding on it at this early in the season for both clubs. There's not really much at stake. It's too early in the season. We're not both going for the title. It's not a semi-final. It's not, it's not do or die, to use that phrase again. So I know what Houghton saying there, if that's what he said, because, Liverpool United in a title race, it evokes kind of, history and that kind of heritage in English football, even though we were never always going for titles regularly. You think about United and Arsenal, at the height of kind of Fergie's pomp, United and Chelsea to a degree as well. And at that period, it was always Liverpool kind of hanging onto your coattails, a few kind of title challenges that kind of faded out by about February time. So, yeah.
The idea of that, going to Anfield with actual points riding on it, it's really G'd me up, that has. creamofmanchester87@gmail.com if you want to get in touch with us. Like and subscribe us on YouTube, please, and you'll find us on all the socials. That was really insightful, I think, from Dave there. And Remo and I are now meeting up to make a giant banner predicting Rumour Amarim's tenure will be longer than Ferguson's, and it's entirely repurposed from one that Dave's just given us that says, Aquilani, a hero will rise. There we are. Mind the trams.